Once again, a very good morning to all of you, right? Hope you all are having a great year. So, today we have to start with a new lesson, chapter number 3, Information Systems, Organizations, and Strategy. So, before we move on to today's lesson, let's just quickly remind ourselves what we have learned in the previous lesson. We talked about globally business, global how information systems change the landscape of business, right? We introduced to you different systems and processes that are present within organizations, different types of information systems used by different managerial levels and how they are linked to each other, right? Also, we talked about the differences between each of these systems, right? We sort of gave you features of each of these systems, and then also we talked about different systems that are there within enterprises which help to link the enterprise together, different divisions, departments, how different systems are linking these separate functions and divisions together. We talked about that as well. We talked about ERPs, we talked about supply chain management, knowledge management systems, and such, right? And also, we talked about network based technologies that can be used to link an organization together, isn't it? So we talked about intranets, we talked about extranets. I hope you remember the differences between these, and also I hope you all can compare and give features of these if you are asked in the examination. Also, we talked about these concepts such as e-government, e-business, e-commerce, right? So that is where we stopped. I hope you all can recall things that we discussed in that lesson, right? So now today we are going to move on to a new chapter, chapter number 3. Let's see what we are going to look at what we are going to learn in this particular chapter. Right. So first, let's have a quick look at the learning outcomes and learning objectives of this chapter. So we are going to identify and describe the most important features of organizations that managers need to know about in order to build and use information systems successfully. Now, there are certain features that are unique to organizations that management should have a clear understanding about. Why should the management have a clear understanding about these features? Because in order to build an effective and efficient information system, and in order to implement it successfully within the organization, the management needs to have a very clear idea about these different features within their organization, right? So we will talk about what these features are in detail today. And also, secondly, demonstrate how Porter's competitive forces model helps companies to develop competitive strategies using information systems. Now, most of you all may have heard of the Porter's competitive forces model, right? He introduced 5 competitive forces, which helps companies to come up with strategies to counter certain competitive forces which affect their business, right? So we are going to talk about that model in detail, right? And how information systems comes into play within this model, right? We are going to integrate that part into this model. And then explain how the value chain and value web models help businesses identify opportunities for strategic information system applications. So you have once again heard about Porter's value chain. So we are going to talk about this value chain in the perspective of information system applications, right? And also the value web concept. So we will talk about these things in detail. Demonstrate how information systems help businesses use synergies, core competencies, network-based strategies to achieve competitive advantage. Now, we all know that because of information systems, because of technology, The business is now linked, right? The enterprise is linked. Also, the business has the capability of linking with other external parties as well. You all have that idea very well now. So we are going to also looking a little bit deeper at this instance where there are these concepts called synergies. Businesses get together and we are going to look at how these synergies can occur, to achieve competitive advantage, for better business performance, to achieve benefits for both the business organizations involved, how these synergies take place in the real world, right? And also how businesses capitalize on their core competencies, what they do best, right? Their best skill sets, their best resources, right? So we are going to look at that as well. And also certain network based strategies. These strategies are specifically network based. That means they are specifically enabled due to networking technologies, right? So we are going to look at such specialized strategies that organizations can use, and also assess the challenges posed by strategic information systems and management solutions. We are also going to look at what sort of challenges can businesses face due to these information systems, right, and management solutions. So at the end of the chapter, we will be focusing on that part. So first things first, let's look at how information technology and organizations influence each other, right? So uh, our first subtopic is organizations and information systems. We are going to learn how there is an interaction between IT and organizations, right? How they influence one another. The interaction between IT and organizations are complex and is influenced by organization structure, business processes, politics, culture, environment, and management decisions. Now, after going through chapter 1 and 2, you all have already an understanding that there is an interaction between IT and organizations, right? You have some idea that there should be a connection between two in order for the organization to perform successfully, right? There should be some relationship. Now, when it comes to the interaction between IT and organizations, this relationship and this interaction is being influenced by some various other factors that are present within the organization. අපේ සංවිධානයේ තියෙන සමහර ලක්ෂණ සමහර ෆීචර්ස් නිසා මේ IT සහ organizations අතර තියෙන අන්තර් සම්බන්ධතාවයට යම්කිසි බලපෑම් කරන්න පුළුවන්. Right? So some of those features are organizations structure, right? What do you mean by the structure? What is your understanding about the organization structure? How would you identify an organization structure? How would you define? Yes? Basically, a structure tells how within an organization certain activities, a certain work are directed and organized in order to achieve the goals, right? What sort of activities? It can be the coordination, supervision, certain roles, responsibilities, roles, right? How these things are organized in a way which ensures that the organization achieves its end goals. That is what the structure tells us, right? There are so many elements which come under structure, but basically that is the understanding. So this can have an impact on the relationship and the nature of relationship that IT and the business organization has. And also organizations business processes. Now you all know what business processes are, right? We have defined this, we have explained this to you. How did we understand a business process? Simply put, we understood that it's a collection of activities which help the organization to produce a product or service. There are information flows, material flows within an organization, within a business process, right? So we have elaborated on that. So you have a basic idea about what is a business process. Now, this nature of business process within an organization also has an impact on the nature of relationship between IT and business organization, right? Also, politics, business politics. Now, when it comes to organization politics, we will describe these things, concepts in detail as we move along the lecture. Organization politics and culture are also very important inherent features within an organization. They also can influence the nature of this relationship between IT and organizations, right? And also the decisions taken by, and also the environment, essentially, right? The business environment. There are many players in the business environment. You already have heard of these different players within the business environment and how they influence on the business, right? They also can influence the nature of the relationship between IT and the business. We will talk about all these things in detail as we move along the lecture. And also the nature of management decisions, right? Now, the different organizations, they have different management styles, right? And different ways how the management takes decisions. So based on these different management decisions also, right, the nature of this relationship and interaction changes. Now let's look at these things in detail. This figure 3.1 explains the two-way relationship between organizations and information technology. Now, earlier I told you that there's an interaction between IT and business organizations, right? So, when there is a two-way relationship, right, as demonstrated in this figure, you can see on this end we have organization, on this end we have information technology. Two-way relationship means they need each other to exist, right? So organization, while the organization gives certain elements to IT, right? IT also needs the certain elements from the organization, as well as the organization also needs certain elements from information technology, right? There should be a two-way relationship exchange between both ways, right? So this complex two-way relationship is mediated by many factors, right? Now this relationship is influenced or mediated by several factors, not the least of which are decisions made or not made by managers. Other factors mediating the relationships include organizational culture, structure, politics, business process, and environment. Now, like we looked at in the earlier slide, this is an organization environment, the culture of the environment, the structure, how work, processes, routines, coordination, all these things are organized within the business, and how business processes, what kind of business processes are there within the organization politics, which we will be talking about in coming slides, and I told you management decisions. So these variables in this middle part shows how variables in this middle part have the ability of impacting the nature of the relationship between organization and information technology, right? For example, simply this is something you already know. How can environment impact on this nature of the relationship? This thing can tell me. Now, one mediating factor is the organizational environment, right? So how can this environment impact on this two-way relationship between organization and IT? From your understanding, just tell me. කොහොමද එන්වයරන්මන්ට් එක සංවිධානය සහ තොරතුරු තාක්ෂණය අතර තියෙන අන්තර් සම්බන්ධතාවයට බලපාන්නේ කොයි විදියටද? Any idea how environment can have an impact on this relationship? No idea. Yes? No one can tell. Right, now let's look at this. Now, when you look at this, you will be able to answer this question better, right? Now, yeah, I think we have one answer. Mm, business located in a rural area. It's not clear to me. Can you maybe elaborate on that a little bit? What you mean by this business located in rural area will pay less attention means, can you please explain what you mean there? Right. So until that, let's move on, right? So now, when we try to understand an organization, right? There's a technical definition and a behavioral definition to an organization, right? Organization can be defined in many different ways, but in this particular chapter, we are focusing on uh, two types of definitions. How organization can be viewed in a technical perspective and how organizations can be viewed in a behavioral perspective, right? Now, in the technical definition, how do we look at an organization? තාක්ෂණික නිර්වචනයේදී අපි කොයි විදිහටද සංවිධානයක් දිහා බලන්නේ? කොයි විදිහටද තාක්ෂණික නිර්වචනයේදී සංවිධානයක් නිර්වචනය කරන්නේ? An organization is a stable, formal social structure that takes resources from the environment and processes them to produce outputs. Now, what does technical definition talk about? It refers to organization as stable and as a formal social structure, right? Now, when you say that organization is a stable and formal, you can, now some of you might think, how can an organization be stable? Don't they change? No, they do change, right? We all know organizations change with the changes that happen within the environment, right? But we say that organizations are relatively stable, right? Relatively stable within its boundaries, with the certain cultural practices they have, the value set they have, right? The mission, the goals they have. So constrained or tied by all these variables, there is a relative stability to an organization, right? They do change with the dynamic environment, but we say that relatively they are stable, right? And also it's a formal social structure, right? That takes resources from the environment and processes them to produce outputs. Another aspect is that the organization is a social structure which takes resources from the environment. That is, you already know about this, right? It is a given. And also to produce outputs which go back to the environment. They might be taking raw materials that they need, right? Certain supplies, involvement of different business partners, employees, right? So, do we have a question? No, I think this is actually relating to um, the sections that we're talking about in the future, right? I will talk about this in the future about HR department taking decisions to use fingerprints to take attendance of employees. That can be very well related to another section that I will be talking in the future. But also, it's a good example that you have given here. Now, she mentions that human resource department takes a decision to use fingerprints to take attendance of employees. Right? I think this is an answer to the question which I asked earlier, how environment can influence on the nature of IT and the organization, right? Yes. Now that means, now when you look at this definition also, it will be clear to you. Organization takes inputs from the environment. That means when the environment keeps on changing, when new technologies emerge, when ways of working change, organization also needs to make certain changes in the way they work, in the technologies they use, right? In the inputs which they use, right? The way how they coordinate employees, the nature of employees that they use for getting this work done, right? So these things will have to change. Now, like your friend has mentioned here, yes, now when the nature of technology changes in the environment, when new technologies emerge in the environment, innovations, disruptive technologies, right? So these need to be incorporated within the environment, within the organization, right? So therefore, it can impact the nature of the relationship, because technology is a variable in the business environment, right? You have learned about these pestle factors, right? Political factors, ecological factors, social factors, technological factors, economic, legal, all these are factors in the external environment of the organization, right? So when these variables change, when there are any change in these variables, it essentially affects the nature of the relationship between IT and business, right? So thank you for bringing out that example. And also, so I actually took it here because it also relates to this section which we are talking about. So now these inputs, they take from the external environment, like I mentioned, and also the products and services which organizations produce, they give it back to the environment, right? And also the organization are formal legal entities with internal rules and procedures that must abide by laws. While it's a stable formal structure, it is also a formal legal entity. Why do we call organizations as a legal entity? Because organization has its own set of internal rules and procedures, right? It stipulates what it should do, what it should not do, what employees should comply with, what they should abstain from doing, or what they should refrain from doing, right? There's a systems of rules and procedures that employees should abide by. And also as an organization, they should abide by the law of the country as well, right? Certain laws and the statute uh, sets out what they should comply with. So based on the nature of your business, you have to abide by these laws. And in addition to that, you all have a set of internal rules and procedures that govern your organization's employees, its business processes, and its way of doing work as well, right? Then when it comes to the behavioral definition, it's somewhat different. Now, technically, we talk about the scenario where organization takes inputs from the environment, processes them, produces an output, how they have their own legal identity within an organization, right? And also in the behavioral definition, on the other hand, what do we look at? අපි කියන චර්යාත්මක නිර්වචනය කියලා. චර්යාත්මක නිර්වචනයේදී අපි කොයි විදියටද organization එකක් දිහා බලන්නේ, right? An organization is a collection of rights, privileges and obligations and responsibilities that is delicately balanced over a period of time through conflict and conflict resolution. Now here the meaning is that in organization there is a system of rights, right? Employees, based on their position, based on the levels that they work, based on their job roles, they have rights, right? Rights they can claim, aitivasika, right? And also privileges, obligations, and responsibilities. Varaprasada, privileges, right? So organization also has a collection of privileges, right? If we take different positions, different employees, they have privileges to which they are entitled to, right? And as well as obligations and responsibilities. When you claim rights and privileges, on the other hand, you also have to deliver a set of obligations and responsibilities, right? You are responsible to the work you do, right? You are accountable to the work you do. Your business processes that you engage in, the tasks and activities that you engage in on a daily basis, the people you interact with, right? So based on the nature of your job role, you are obliged to do certain things. Based on your job title, maybe, based on your position, you are obliged. As well as you have a responsibility, set of responsibilities which you should fulfill, right? So, in the behavioral definition, we look at how these different elements are balanced within the organization. අපි කියනවා අපේ අයිතිවාසිකම් වරප්‍රසාද ඒ වගේම අපේ යුතුයකම් හරි යුතුයකම් කියන්නේ මෙතෙන්දී ඇත්තටම අපි කියන්නේ අපේ වගකීම් මෙන්න මේ දේවල් කොහොමද එකිනෙකත් එක්ක සම්බන්ධ වෙලා සමබරව පවත්වාගෙන යන්නේ සංවිධානයක් විසින් කියන එක තමයි අපි බලන්නේ behavioral definition එකේදී. එතකොට කොහොමද මේ balance එක පවත්වාගෙන යන්නේ organization එක? How do they balance it? Through conflict and conflict resolution, right? Now, when you try to balance these different variables, now there are different types of people in the organization in different positions, different levels. When you try to balance these privileges, obligations, responsibilities, there might be conflicts, right? Because people, they have different viewpoints. Everyone would not agree to everything that the leadership says, right? So there might be conflicts, where the opinions do not match with each other. They conflict, right? So therefore, when these conflicts arise, there should be a system of conflict resolution as well. Right? When different viewpoints ask for different things and as a result conflicts arise, organizations also have a system of resolving these different types of disputes and conflicts. Right? So organization is actually a balance of all these things according to the behavioral definition. Right? So that is why we say in the behavioral definition, an organization is seen as a collection of rights, privileges, obligations, responsibilities that can be balanced over a period of time with conflict and conflict resolution. I hope now you can see the difference between technical definition and the behavioral definition, right? I hope that's clear to you all. So if we move on, now tell me, now you all know what is the technical definition of organization, what is the behavioral definition of organization. What do you think is the best way to look at organizations, right? Or what do you think defines an organization better? Is it the technical definition or is it the behavioral definition? In your opinion, can you tell me? අපි technical definition එකකින්ද organization එක දිහා බලන්න ඕනේ. එහෙම නැත්නම් behavioral definition එකකින්, behavioral aspect එකකින්ද? කොහොම බැලුවොත්ද වඩා සාර්ථක? එහෙම නැත්නම් කොයි විදිහටද organization එකක් අපි වඩා සාර්ථකව නිර්වචනය කරන්න පුළුවන්? නැත්නම් කොයි aspect එකද සාමාන්‍යයෙන් තියෙන්න ඕනේ වැඩිපුර organization එක? Okay, so something is behavioral, something is technical. Okay, some say that behavioral definition is better to control human beings. Behavioral because we consider rights and obligations. And some say that both definitions are needed, both perspectives. All right. So hold that thought. Now let's see. How do these definitions of organizations relate to information technology? Right, now let's see the answer to your question, right? The technical view encourages us to focus on how inputs are combined to create outputs when technology changes are introduced into the company. Now, you know what the technical definition is. We talked about how it elaborates on taking inputs from the environment and giving back to the environment in terms of outputs, right? So in this view, we see how this combination of inputs and creation of outputs are affected when technology changes are introduced into the company, right? In earlier slide also, I explained to you how this can be changed with the change of technology. Now, for example, with the introduction of that fingerprint system, right, for recording attendance, how can it change the nature of inputs and creation of outputs within the organization, and how can it change the nature of business processes within the organizations, right? Because of that, sometimes the job roles of certain employees may change, right? So it can be an input to a system, or it can be an input to a business process. So certain job roles may change, right? The way how certain people work may change. And also, let's say if we implement a new information systems within the organization, right? Because of that information system, sometimes the organization may have to replace a certain amount of labor. They might no longer require this labor to work within the organization. The system may be able to fulfill the work done by these employees, right? So there might be certain changes. Labor is also an input, right? Employee work, labor is an input to our business processes now. So it may change. And also the nature of outputs may change, maybe the in terms of quality of our products and services, right? Maybe the nature of our products and services, because it may enable sometimes new innovations, right? New creations, uh, digital products, digital goods, right? Digital services. So likewise, the nature of these inputs and outputs may change when technology changes happen, right? And if we look at the behavioral definition, this suggests that building new information systems or rebuilding old systems involves much more than a technical arrangement of machines or workers. Now, in the behavioral definition, um, when it comes to building a new information system within an organization, or when an organization tries to rebuild an old system, maybe upgrade it, make certain changes to an existing system, right? It involves much more than a technical rearrangement. Now there can be a technical change in the way how people work, right? The machinery we use, right? And all those things according to the technical view. But in the behavioral view, what we look at is some information systems change the organizational balance of rights, privileges, obligations, responsibilities, and feelings that have been established over a long period of time. Now, because of some information systems, right, organization essentially can have a change in their rights, right? People may change the way they formerly had rights to information, right? The former privileges they had, the former obligations and responsibilities they had, these may change, right? Then අලුත් information system එකක් අපි organization එකට introduce කරනකොට සමහර අයගේ ඒගොල්ලන්ට තිබ්බ යම් අයිතිවාසිකම්, ඒගොල්ලන්ට තිබ්බ යම් වරප්‍රසාද, ඒගොල්ලන්ගේ තිබ්බ යම් වගකීම් වෙනස් වෙන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර අයට තිබ්බ privileges නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර අයට තිබ්බ rights නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. ඒ වගේම සමහර අයට වැඩිපුර rights privileges එන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර අයට තිබ්බ වගකීම් අඩු වෙන්න පුළුවන්. සමහර අයට තිබ්බ වගකීම් වැඩි වෙන්න පුළුවන්. information system එකක් නිසා සමහර විට, right? එතකොට දැන් උදාහරණයක් විදිහට අපි හිතමු බැංකුවකට, මම කලිනුත් මේ එක්සැම්පල් එක අරන් තියෙනවා, අපි සිස්ටම් එකක් ඉන්ට්‍රොඩියුස් කිරීම නිසා අපි කිව්වා බැංක් ටෙලර්ට වැඩි අවකාශයක් තියෙනවා ඉන්ෆර්මේෂන් වලට, ඇක්සස් වැඩිපුර තියෙනවා, එයාට ඩිසිෂන් මේකින් පවර් එක වැඩි වෙනවා, ඒ වගේම ඒත් එක්කම එයාගේ රෙස්පොන්සිබිලිටි එකත් අනිත් පැත්තට වැඩි වෙනවා නේ. ඒ ඩිසිෂන් එයා ගන්න ඩිසිෂන් සම්බන්ධයෙන් ඇඩිෂනල් රෙස්පොන්සිබිලිටි එකක් එයාට එනවා, right? So when a bank teller gets access to a system, he gets the decision making right, it's a new right which he or she did not have in earlier before the information system was introduced, and because of that his information rights have been increased, right? He or she has more access to information, as well as he or she gets a new set of responsibilities and obligations based on the decisions that he or she makes. So in the behavioral definition, we look at information systems in this way, right? So now in answering to your previous question, right? Now you know how the technical definition and the behavioral definition relates to information systems technology, right? So now tell me what definition is better, or how is it better to look at information system? Now I think most answers say from both definitions. Yes, right? You cannot look at information systems. You cannot look at organization in a purely technical way or in a purely behavioral way, right? Both definitions has to be there. You have to also look at how the organization takes inputs from the environment, how they process it, and how they create outputs. At the same time, you have to be very careful about any changes that happen within people's rights, their duties, their obligations, the way they feel about their job role, about the organization. All these key things can change because of these information systems, right? So therefore, you have to carefully balance both these sides, right? So I hope it's clear to all of you. Right. Now we are going to look at features of organizations. Now at the beginning of the lecture also I told you that due to certain features of the organization, um, the way how information systems and organizations react may change, right? I told that you at the beginning of the lecture. Now we are going to look at certain such features of the organizations, right? Now most of these features, they are things that you have already heard about, but let's see if we can look at these things in an information systems perspective, right? Okay, so take a few minutes to just read through these 4 points, first 4 features,